Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West, and we're going to continue doing what we've been doing since week 50 here on Third Age Thursdays, and that's taking a look at the poetry and songs from The Lord of the Rings. Now, last week we flew through several poems, including a few rhymes of lore. Ere iron was found or tree was hewn, all about the Ents. Tall ships and tall kings, 3x3, about the seeing stones. And Gollum's expanded edition of the riddle game, The Cold Hard Lands. This week, we get to a hobbit rhyme of lore in Oliphant. In Book 4, Chapter 3, The Black Gate is Closed, Frodo and Sam find themselves peering over the edge of a hollow and watching as more and more troops arrive to the Black Gate. Gollum has described these men, these Southrons, as almost as bad as orcs and much bigger. Smeagol thinks they have come out of the south beyond the great river's end. And that gives Sam an idea. Were there any Oliphants? Asked Sam, forgetting his fear in his eagerness for news of strange places. No Oliphants. What are Oliphants? Said Gollum. Sam stood up, putting his hands behind his back, as he always did when speaking poetry, and began. Gray as a mouse, big as a house, nose like a snake, I make the earth shake. As I tramp through the grass, trees crack as I pass. With horns in my mouth, I walk in the south, flapping big ears beyond count of years. I stump round and round, never lie on the ground, not even to die. Oliphant am I, biggest of all, huge, old, and tall. If ever you'd met me, you wouldn't forget me. If you never do, you won't think I'm true. But old Oliphant am I, and I never lie. That, said Sam, when he had finished reciting, that's a rhyme we have in the Shire. Nonsense, maybe, and maybe not. But we have our tales, too, and news out of the south, you know. In the old days, hobbits used to go on their travels now and again. Not that many ever came back, and not that all they said was believed. News from Bree, and not sure as Shire talk, as the sayings go. But I've heard tales of the big folk down away in the Sunlands. Swartings, we call them in our tales, and they ride on Oliphants, 'tis said, when they fight. They put houses and towers on the Oliphants' backs and all, and the Oliphants throw rocks and trees at one another. So when you said, men out of the south all in red and gold, I said, were there any Oliphants? For if there was, I was going to take a look, risk or no. But now I don't suppose I'll ever see an Oliphant. Maybe there ain't no such a beast. He sighed. Of course, later, much to his excitement and his terror, Sam would see one, but that's not a poem, so we'll stick to what we've just read. This poem was reprinted later in The Adventures of Tom Bombadil as Oliphant, and it's referred to by that name in the text. Frodo stood up. He had laughed in the midst of all his cares when Sam trotted out the old fireside rhyme of Oliphant, and the laugh had released him from hesitation. I wish we had 1,000 Oliphants, with Gandalf on a white one at their head, he said. So, Oliphant it is. It's a rhyme of lore, really. It's just a hobbit rhyme of lore. And maybe it's nonsense, maybe it's not. In letter 64, written to Christopher on April 30th, 1944, Tolkien explains this chapter that he's working on will include a large elephant of prehistoric size. A war elephant of the Swartings is loose, and Sam has gratified a lifelong wish to see an Oliphant, an animal about which there was a hobbit nursery rhyme, though it was commonly supposed to be mythical. He goes on to provide the full text of the poem, adding to Christopher that, I hope that it's something of the nursery rhyme flavor. Skull and Hammond, in their work on the collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien, add that in its earlier drafts, this poem included some unusual lines that didn't survive. Feet like a lion, extraordinary if we read that correctly. Ears like a sail, but my little tail. But look at my tail. And horns for my teeth. Poor old Oliphant. Those are some of the lines that just didn't make it. Now, in their Reader's Companion, they conveniently point us to Tolkien's nomenclature, where he tells translators of Lord of the Rings that the word Oliphant is an archaic form of elephant used as a rusticism, on the supposition that rumor of the southern beast would have reached hobbits in the Shire long ago in the form of legend. Tolkien wrote a sort of predecessor to this poem as well, called Yumbo, or Ye Kind of Ye Oliphant, published in 1927. Now, both of these poems are clearly about elephants, and they're both clearly inspired by the medieval bestiary. But Skull and Hammond make an important distinction. Yumbo was satire, but for Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, quote, needed a poem which prefigured the dramatic appearance of an actual Oliphant, the Mumak of Harad. but which was suited to the character of Sam Gamgee, something which could be considered traditional in the Hobbit culture. Folks, honestly, I'd hoped to get to the next poem in the book as well this episode, Over the Land There Lies a Long Shadow. It's the prophecy of Malbeth, spoken by Aragorn in the passing of the Grey Company. But that poem is going to have a lot of discussion attached to it. It's the only alliterative verse in The Lord of the Rings not associated with Rohirrim. So we'll start Series 11's Third Age Thursdays with that one. For now, though, folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. Be sure to come back tomorrow for another Fandom Friday. Check out patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get bonus episodes, and more. Podcast listeners, please subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. On YouTube, subscribe to the channel to get all of the PPP productions. And everybody, please follow @PrancingPonyPod on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.